Le Burundi n'est pas un cas isolé sur le
Burundi is not an isolated case on the continent. In effect, after the Global Index on Impunity published by the Committee for Protection of Journalists, 3 African countries are among the 12 states in which at least 5 murders of journalists have not been resolved during the last decade. Somalia is leading with 26 unresolved murders, while the South Sudan comes in 4th place and Nigeria at the 11th position. And then, according to several press associations, journalists have been the victims of violence and intimidations in Guinea recently. And then dozens of them came to support one of their colleagues detained in Guinea and beaten by police in Conakry. Abubakar Kamara, a journalist accused of insulting the head of state and for disseminating of false news.
Well, Elizabeth Wichel from the Committee to Protect Journalists joins us now over the phone from London, United Kingdom. Thank you very much for joining us, Elizabeth. The CPJ report says Somalia accounts for unsolved murders of journalists for the 3rd year now, which makes impunity for crimes committed against journalists intertwined with the shaky political and terrorism situation in Somalia. Elizabeth, has injustice against journalists worsened?
As you know, the report, we've been tracking these numbers for a decade. This is our 10th edition of the Impunity Index. And I would say there's definitely been a transition in the last 5 years or so about that, where countries that are facing threats from extremist groups or involved in civil conflict, we're seeing journalists caught in the crosshairs of those struggles, where different groups are trying to intimidate the media for coverage purposes, to control their message, and that sort of things that we're seeing in Somalia. We have that same pattern in, I would say, most of the top countries on our index this year. But that said, that's not the only reason. There are instances of journalists, even in Somalia, who it's not clear who's targeting them, and the lack of investigation, the lack of response by authorities, and the lack of commitment by the government to address this and investigate and actually take action to try to catch the perpetrators just creates a stronger climate of impunity.
The CPJ's data also show that about 93% of murder victims are local reporters, and the majority cover politics and corruption in their home countries. What's your projection of where governments are headed regarding bringing an end to all of this?
Well, on the one hand, there's some encouraging signs in the last 5 years or so that there's been a surge in international interest and awareness and pressure from the international community around this issue. The UN particularly has placed it very high on its agenda. So there's been several resolutions calling on states to take action to address impunity. There's a UN action plan for the safety of journalists and the issue of impunity. And we're just starting to see that kind of trickle over to state action. So we are seeing, a kind of, I would say, a broader interest and engagement by countries on this issue. So I find that encouraging, but it has not yet changed the reality on the ground. Journalists are still heavily targeted, and impunity rates have really barely budged.
So how best can individuals and organizations contribute to end impunity for crimes against journalists?
When journalists cover these stories, when the media is really focused on following up on what happens after a journalist is killed, monitoring the investigation and reporting on it, it has a big impact. If I look at the sort of handful of cases around the world that have actually been solved and the suspects have been convicted, one of the common factors is that the media in those countries were very, very engaged. Countries are expected to provide a yearly update to UNESCO on the status of journalists that have been killed in their countries, and the response rates are very low. And I think that's another process that the more people are educated about, the more they can ask questions. Why hasn't our government provided the information about the status of these cases? Why are they not participating in this accountability mechanism?